Welcome to Love and Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Hello, beautiful babes. Welcome back to another episode of Love and Lattes. Victoria here, the self-love scientist, and today's episode is quite special because it is my 3-year anniversary since my divorce. Yep, 3 years. My life was completely different. And instead of feeling sad or bitter, I decided to celebrate. Because here's the thing, here's what I've learned. Big life changes, whether it's divorce, moving across the country, changing careers, or even just ending a friendship. Every single step of your life deserves to be honored and celebrated. They're not just endings, these are really big invitations. As I said before, my life 3 years ago was completely different. I remember sitting on the floor in my first new apartment, kind of fresh out, feeling like I had a completely clear slate, and it was so terrifying because my entire identity, my life had been built around that relationship. And I remember thinking, even before I got to that point, like, how am I going to make it out here? And one of the biggest things was, recognizing that it is great to have that clean slate. And it's just recognizing that even though it's a clean slate, even though this is a very vulnerable moment, I have the power to make the next move. Now, wasn't like an overnight thing. This was a gradual recognition, of what I wanted things to be differently. And I did. And so today, 3 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you, beautiful listeners, and I am in a life that feels so much more softer. It's more freeing. I feel beautiful. I'm moving with intention. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's fucking crazy. And I sat here and thinking about, where I was 3 years ago, how I got to this point, and I was like, I'm gonna share my 3 rules for how I began romanticizing my life. And I'm so excited to get into that with you guys because these rules are going to help you fall back in love with your life, even if it's messy, even if things have not gone the way you expected. This one's for you. So, my 3 rules for romanticizing my life. Before we get into the first one, I just want to say I feel like a lot of us tend to kind of go about life. For me, it was a checklist, right? You got to go about things, you get titles, and you kind of just stick with it. And the issue is it's so easy for us to kind of fall into these things because as human beings, psychologically, we want to feel validated, we want to fit in, we want to, for women especially, we want to do as much as we can because we believe that that's where our worthiness comes from. And that's not true. It's actually about how you're feeling about the life you're living and leading, and love should be affiliated with that. So, what if we kind of just set aside those titles, those expectations, and that looking for validation on the outside? What if we began romanticizing? And that is something I wanted to really be intentional about, those 3 years ago. I remember sitting in my new apartment and I was like, first of all, I manifested this apartment. I had dreams about it. I Pinterest about it. I even stayed in one um, before I officially left, and that's another story. But the thing is, I finally had the space to, move about life, and it was very important for me to become the woman I letting more of this, feminine version of myself out versus being, I was very masculine in my previous relationships. And I was like, nope, I get to be soft and I get to lead myself, but also welcome in the love that I've been searching for. But I can't welcome in the love unless I follow these 3 rules. So romanticizing your life is all about falling in love with the in-between process. It's about, what kind of coffee mug are you using when you pour that coffee in? It's about going for the walk outside and feeling the sun on your skin. And it's deciding that your life gets to feel like a romance novel, like a chick flick. It can feel however you want it to feel, but make it feel so damn good. Because the thing is, which we will get into in just a second, um, actually, you know what? Let's just jump into it. This is the thing. The first rule, the first rule to romanticize your life. One, stop waiting for permission. I really thought about this because I remember hearing years ago from Mel Robbins, she was like, no one is coming. And I was like, damn. And after very difficult conversations and learning and recognizing that the things I wanted in life weren't available in certain in circumstances with certain relationships, I had the power to give myself that permission to be like, okay, what's my next move? Right. And when it comes to romanticizing your life, no one is going to make your life magical. That's your job. So you need to give yourself the permission. You don't have to wait for someone else to give you the green light. You don't have to wait for someone to choose you because that can turn into settling. You get to choose. You get to make yourself feel okay again. And for me, it was recognizing, when I was in my house and understanding that, am I going to stay here and just put this expectation that it's going to get better or that someone is going to save me? And then even when I moved out and started living, my new life, I had that idea of, I'm waiting for the knight on the horse, to come save me because that's what it was before. And then I realized I was like, wait a minute, I have the ability to give myself the permission. I have the ability and capabilities to save myself. And I decided I'm going to pursue myself. I'm giving myself permission to pursue and romanticize and love myself. What does that look like exactly? Well, for me, I gave myself permission to leave the country. So I did. I left the country and I thought, oh my God, this is so wild. I can't believe I'm doing this by myself. But I went anyway. And it was the most freeing thing I've ever done. I'm not saying this is exactly what you have to do, but the point of it was I I had always wanted to leave the country with someone. And now I was kind of, in my healing journey after the separation and getting to know the woman I was like, what would really, you know, who am I trying to prove that I have to, wait to leave the country? And I remember, a long time ago back in corporate days, I was like, yeah, I gotta wait for the vacation, blah, blah, blah. Nope, I'm leaving. And it was amazing. I had a beautiful time and it wasn't, a smaller, I would say smaller chunks of this rule of stop waiting for permission. I advise my clients to, you don't have to wait for a special event like the anniversary, a birthday, to go to the nice fancy restaurants. You don't have to wait for the once a week meeting to wear the red lipstick, You don't have to wait till you feel terrible or sick to be like, okay, fine, I'm finally going to start taking the classes. No, you don't have to wait for someone to be like, oh yeah, I think you are worthy of this job. It's like, no, no, you're more than capable of taking on this job, even if like there's a little couple extra things. But I'm just saying you got to put yourself out there, and that's what this is all about. You don't have to wait for someone to give you access to their life. You already have access to your own. So I challenge you with this first rule of stop waiting for permission. What is one thing you are going to do? Just one thing for you where you don't have to ask permission from anyone else. This is something you get to choose. Maybe you're like, I am going to go get a pedicure, or I am going to take myself out to dinner, or maybe you also are going through a separation or a breakup, or maybe you're in the in between dates and you're like, you know what? I do give myself permission to say no, right? Okay. So the second one, and this is probably my favorite. I want rule number two to romanticize your life, flirt with your own potential. Can you see how the first one, stop waiting for permission, kind of melts into the second one? Flirt with your own potential. This is so big. And I I like this rule so much because I started using this, in the beginning, it was kind of like this is where you start to recognize how really like how absolutely fucking amazing you are, right? This looks like doing a little more, stepping outside of the comfort zone and realizing like, oh my God, like you're actually super hot and like super beautiful. And for me, it began noticing that I was like always playing it safe. And again, it kind of goes back to like, oh, I don't know, what if they don't like me? Or playing it small, being soft and keeping my hair tucked in, or wearing shirts a little bit higher, or keeping my makeup soft and, don't wear the red lipstick. Ugh. But the thing about it is, what happens if you would say yes to a little bit more? What happens if you were like, actually, this is where, for me, I do believe that it is possible to manifest a lot of things. So a really great example is 2 years ago, I was traveling a lot to DC, right? And I remember sitting at a cafe and I looked out the window and I saw the most beautiful building. And I was like, I gotta know what this is. And it turns out it was an apartment complex. And I can't tell you how many people in my life at the time were like, oh, DC is awful. It's so expensive. There's crime, blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting there going, this building is absolutely beautiful. I went in there. I was able to see a room immediately on the seventh floor. Very lucky. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I can have this. This was a luxury apartment, 7 stories up, and I got to overlook the entire city. And in my brain, I remember feeling so nervous, like shaky. And I remember my tour guide, super sweet, was like, when are you thinking about moving here? And I immediately was like, well, when is it available? So I flirted with this idea like, yeah, I can totally live in DC. Why not me? So why not you? And eventually, long story short, my babes, I did get that apartment and I lived there for 2 years and it was fucking amazing. I can't tell you how, like, I had photo shoots there, I had little dinner parties there. I really, that was in itself was a whole nother important chapter. And the thing about it is, when you flirt with your own potential and you get yourself out of that comfort zone and do something a little on the drastic side, but actually, something that's still a little bit within the means, you're playing bigger. And when you play a little bit bigger, life gets to feel a little more adventurous and exciting. And everyone loves a little excitement. So, my challenge for you on this rule with flirting with your own potential, I want you to say yes to something that scares you in the best way. Maybe that looks like shooting your shot. Don't wait for another person to invite you. Just go ahead and take the step. I used to always like wait, like, oh no, they have to message me first. Nope. If I want something, I'm gonna go after it. But I'm going to go after it and then walk away. Maybe that's complimenting something. I'm not expecting a compliment in return. Maybe it's going after the apartment and saying, you know what, let me just put it out there and seeing if I get approved. And, really cute short story. I sent a message to my partner and I kind of left it. And, now I get to travel around the world because we're in each other's lives. Um, so say yes to something this week that scares you in the best way. Flirt with your own potential. Maybe wear something really sexy. I would love if you could share with me, you know, what is that thing that you did? Share it in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram. I would love, love, love to hear. Okay, bear with me. We're almost there. The third rule about romanticizing your life is all about collecting moments. This one is big for me, right? Collecting moments and not validation. This is all about your quality time. Over the course, and you might be experiencing this now, or maybe this is something you're going to start noticing when especially if you're going through a separation or a breakup, there are going to be some changes in your other relationships. There might be people who are no longer around. There might be people who are still around because they love you. The thing about it is, it's so important to make sure that you're spending your time and energy with the ones who raise your energy up or inspire you, educate you, who make you feel good and love you for who you are. Also, I do think it's very important to spend that time with those people who are not afraid to tell you how it is. And maybe you have to have the conversations. And the other thing about collecting moments and not validation is for a very long time, this, for me, I was all about working really, really hard. I just wanted everyone around me to be happy and satisfied. And if I just worked hard enough, or maybe use this word very similar, if I just did X, Y, and Z, then X, Y, and Z. And I realized up until at the end of 2023, I was busting ass. For who? Right? I no longer had to validate my hard work. I would get excited, when I would work with others and travel. And I realized that I was like, man, I am not spending enough time with the people who I love and who love me. And so this year I made a huge change and started, spending more time with family, making weekend dates with my friends. And I started recognizing that, even when I would travel and I would meet people in different countries or states, I realized that, I didn't have to hide and I didn't have to like pretend to be like this, I'm better or I'm not good enough to hang out. It's like, no, I put myself out there and I was always like the world would receive me just as good and delicious. And this whole rule about collecting moments and not validation is big because when you stop living for other people's validations or even expectations. So if you were in a relationship and your person expected you to show up in a certain way and you're like, nah, and then you left, proud of you. I know that's hard. And also, life is about to start feeling really full because you get to set the terms for your life. And that's exciting. And if this is a brand new life for you, if you're starting off with a clean slate, I know it can feel very scary, but the best part is you're in charge and you're not alone in this journey. So I want you to take this third rule about collecting moments and not validation. And can you recall a time where it was just you did something, you experienced something because you wanted to, you showed up for you, not because of anybody else? Just think about that for a minute. So, what do you think of these rules, right? Three rules to romanticize your life. Number one, stop waiting for permission. Go for it. As Mel Robbins would say, no one is coming. Baby steps if you have to. If you have to jump, there's going to be a net to catch you. When you stop waiting for permission, you start showing up. You're stepping more into your power. Number two, flirt with your own potential. Do a little more, step outside your comfort zone, shoot your shot, go for the big job, go for the, very attractive guy at the coffee shop. Just, you got to change things up. If you want things to be different from your previous relationships, you got to do life different. And finally, collect moments and not validation. Life is all about living, not working. And this is your life. You get to create what it is. You are an adult. You are setting the rules. You are setting the stage. 3 years ago, I thought if I do this divorce, my life is over. No one is going to love me. I'm not going to survive. How am I going to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And it turns out, even though I went with it, I trusted myself, I could feel the relief with that fear in mind, which is totally normal. That is a, response as, human social creatures and survival. This was just the beginning. And I'll never forget all the small things along the way, whether it was putting myself out there on dating apps or going after the apartments I wanted to live in or leaving the country. These moments really paved the way for the life I wanted to have because I believe that if you lead a life you love, and you create that space to love yourself, you open up the potentials for others to love you, and you are capable of loving others as well, right? I know this might sound a little more contradictory when it comes to relationships where it's like, well, I expect my partner to do this. Just make sure you do communicate your expectations and the things that you do need in a relationship, because that can get a little messy. So wherever you are in your journey, I hope you celebrate today. Celebrate today how far you've come. Even if it's been messy, even if it's not perfect, big changes deserve to be honored. And if you love today's episode, share it with a friend who needs a little reminder that life can be magical again. I would love to hear how these rules are going for you. Drop it in the comments or send me a DM at Victoria_Eisenhower. Until next time, loves, have a great day.